Okay, guys, welcome to another episode of the Mic'd Up Outdoor Podcast. I am your host, Josh Tanner, and tonight my guest is Mr. Jared Mills from Iowa. Jared is a longtime, I guess, hunting personality. Would you kind of
Yeah,
call it that? You've
yeah,
been, let's just say you've been around the industry for quite a while. Jared started out as one of the guys that was with Midwest Whitetail, probably from close to the very start, correct?
yeah. I think I joined Bill. I guess it'd be 2 years after he started it, so
Okay.
just shortly after launch. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, Jared was kind enough to jump on with me here for this podcast, and um, we just figured we'd see. You just purchased some new property, so that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you because I'm just really curious about the whole property and how you I guess set up your properties or what you look for in the properties. I mean, Iowa's kind of it's a hotbed for deer hunters for sure, and I just wanted to get you on here and kind of pick your brain a little bit and maybe share some of your knowledge and for anybody that might be listening. But I guess before we get started, I guess tell the listeners about yourself and kind of who you are and where you come from and
Yep.
what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm glad
You
we were
bet.
able to connect and make it work. Yeah, like you mentioned, I am in Iowa. I'm in the eastern part of the state. I was born and raised in Iowa. Lived here pretty much my entire life. I went to college in St. Louis and played baseball for a few years down there, and then moved back to Iowa upon graduation. So, hunting and the outdoor life has been a part of me for forever. I kind of got my start, not necessarily, excuse me, on the deer hunting side, but my grandpa and my dad were more small game hunting, but big into trapping. So, some of my earliest outdoor memories were running trap lines with them, and the excitement of getting out each morning and seeing what we caught, and just that whole process. So I have a lot of fond memories from that time, but it's what kind of ignited that fire and passion of just everything outdoors. Obviously sports are always a big part of my life, but I always enjoyed hunting too, and the deer hunting thing came a little bit later, probably closer to high school. I didn't really know too many people that were bow hunters, just amongst my, especially friends, but even family. And so the fun part, like looking back, I'm very thankful how I got into bow hunting. It was simply just cutting my teeth, just trying to learn it and, learn through failure after failure after failure. And,
Yeah.
when I look where I'm at today from a bow hunting perspective and career perspective, I'm grateful that it did come that way. I think my appreciation for it is a lot greater. Be just by learning the ropes that way. So, bow hunting's a huge passion of mine now. But obviously I've been filming my hunts for 15, 16, 17 years, something like that now. And
Wow.
so the filming side has become just as much of a passion as the bow hunting side, really.
Hmm.
For me, they work hand in hand, fortunately, for what I do for a living. But um, even if no one ever watched, another one of my hunts again, I would still
Right.
take the camera to the woods every day. I love the challenge, especially of creating high quality content. So, filming, hunting, and you mentioned the land management aspect. That's a huge part of what I do now too. I think I love the process and the journey more than the kill itself. So, a lot of what I do now revolves around those main things.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times that people who love hunting love everything that leads up to the actual shot just as much as the
Hmm.
actual hunt itself. I mean, myself, I have a passion for videoing, my hunts. And like you said, it doesn't really matter if if anybody, anybody watches them or not. But I mean, I love
Right.
that, that feeling of success when you have a successful hunt and you are able to get it on film, you know, and to me, that is just as much of a endorphin rush as actually taking an animal. I mean, so
Right.
that's a huge part of it as well. And I mean, your stuff is super high quality. Um, and I know that the level of work that it takes, especially when you're doing like the self filming thing, to do all of that at a high level is even tougher yet. You know, it's one thing to have a cameraman following you around, but to like get all
Right.
those shots, those B-roll shots and stuff
Yeah.
that like nobody really realizes that, yeah, like that took a lot of work to get just that itself. And you know,
Right.
so yeah,
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 and it does. It takes a lot of work, as you mentioned. But again, it helps that it's something I'm passionate about. And I always, especially during these conversations, try to think about, because I know it's a small niche audience that films their hunts and gets that. So like, the biggest thing I like to point out about filming is just the documentation of it is 100% worth it to me, just for my own documentation and being able to go back and relive those encounters, those
yeah,
hunts, those experiences at any time. Pull up that footage. Every buck I've killed over the past 17 years, I can pull up the clip and put myself right back in that moment. And that's what makes the pain and struggle of filming and taking all the equipment every time worth doing. So
right,
that's
right,
that's just kind of, I like to just kind of point that out to guys that don't film, that maybe have this perception of guys that film are just doing it because they're in the industry or trying to make it or trying to do it for the TV show. There's a
sure,
lot of other reasons to film, and that's the primary one that drives me.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Have you always just been a whitetail guy? I mean,
Pretty
do you
much.
get into fishing or any
Um,
other hunting?
Obviously I turkey on a decent amount,
Sure, sure.
but pretty much now everything I'm so ate up with whitetail hunting, and again the process, it's kind of a year-round thing.
Yeah,
And so I would rather be working on a property or doing some type of off-season project than going out and chasing turkeys anymore. But I do enjoy turkey hunting. I enjoy taking people turkey hunting probably more than anything.
yeah.
In fact, I'm potentially going to be taking my daughter out in a couple days to try to get her first bird. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's awesome.
looking
That's
forward to
awesome.
that. But yeah, I mean, I've elk hunted a little bit. I really enjoy that whenever I can get tags. That's the hardest part, as you know. Fishing, it's funny. Like I enjoy fishing. Again, I don't make as much time for it anymore. But growing up, like even when I was starting to bow hunt, high school, and even into college, I was ate up with bass fishing.
Yeah,
Like I would say junior high, high school, like I wanted to be a professional angler. I
right.
loved. I watched every tournament I could find. Like my buddies and I would go find a lake nearby and put on our own little tournaments. Like I was ate up with competitive bass fishing and thought that's what I wanted to do.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
until the bow hunting bug really bit me, and I kind of went that direction.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, like I I love deer hunting, but I also love fishing just as much, and
Yeah.
all the things that go along with it, and it's tough. I appreciate guys like yourself who like can focus in on just one aspect, like the whitetail. Because for me, man, I'm just like a squirrel running around. Whatever season it is, I'm all in on it. Whether it be turkey
Yeah.
season or deer season, or up here in Michigan. I mean, right now, like steelhead fishing is in its like we're in our prime
Okay.
time of the season, and like that to me is like shooting a booner whitetail when you hook into a big old steelhead in the river. And I mean it's
That's
something
awesome.
special. I mean, or fishing out on the Great Lakes for salmon and stuff, and fighting one on one with something like that really gets me jazzed up. But I
Yeah.
wish I
That's cool.
had I wish I had like the capability of just focusing in on one particular thing, because it would be a lot less stressful. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
Yeah, I don't know if it's less stress or
it's
not.
probably not less
I
stressful.
think
But
it's potentially equally as stressful, just in a different way. But
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think all of those experiences are important, and all can play together. I think it's good too. It probably prevents burnout a little more. The more things you're into, seasonally like that, it can prevent burnout from doing one thing year round.
I would probably tend to agree with that because like I get excited each season for whatever is going on,
Yep.
and I could see where you might get burned out, with the whitetail thing and all those aspects and trying to search for something new to keep that spark alive,
Right.
So, I mean, you're fortunate that you're in the whitetail mecca of
Right.
the United States. And I mean, that you were born and raised in Iowa, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So with you, when you were growing up, I mean, did you have any idea that like outside of, yeah, I mean, you were probably relatively used to seeing really, really high quality bucks. Was that a norm for you or was that,
Um, I think I knew the reputation of Iowa. It wasn't as big back then as it is now. I
yeah,
wouldn't think.
probably, I would say probably in the 90s, it probably was just a little hidden secret a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just like everything's blown it up with social media and
Yeah.
and all that. But growing up, I didn't have access to great properties. Like a lot of what I was hunting was smaller stuff or pressured, um, stuff that other people were hunting as well. So like,
Hmm.
I don't think I quite had an understanding of the full potential of Iowa deer hunting, just because I was just in my own little world. I was in my
Right.
own situation, and my own
Right. Right.
situation was, you're not. It wasn't like I was managing a big parcel of land or had
Sure.
access to a bunch of family land or something like that. It was just permission pieces and just grinding it out. And of course, you're not running trail cameras and stuff like that, so you just don't know. You're just going off of encounters and
Sure.
what
Sure.
you see. So I don't think I quite had the same understanding and appreciation of what I do now of Iowa deer hunting, but it was still certainly good enough to get me hooked from an early age.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that, going from where, let's just say where Iowa is right now to where it was, when you were a young kid, would you say that it's better or worse? Just
It's a
in a
good question. I
just in a
think
general view, because
yeah.
it's everybody's a little bit different how they look at it.
I think it's better and worse all at the same time. If I had to answer that, just and I'll try to explain that. I think it's worse now than it was 10 to 15 years ago,
Hmm.
when the hunting pressure was less and the overall attention was less on the state.
Sure.
You just think about how many people are buying land in Iowa or moved to Iowa just for the hunting just in the last 12 to 15 years.
Oh yeah.
It's you can't necessarily really go out and get permission, knock on doors and get permission anymore. So I think it's worse in that standpoint. The hunting pressure overall has increased. I think it's better in the standpoint that there is more land management, deer management going on. So, I think that has helped increase the age structure of bucks in certain areas, where it can be controlled. Obviously, these landowners that have bigger parcels, cooperating neighborhoods, that type of stuff
Yeah.
have certainly gotten better than 15, 20 years ago.
Sure. Sure.
But I just think about like even when I first started with Winke, that 2010 time frame, and even a few years before that, just having known of his farm in that area of southern Iowa, it was unbelievable. Like the quantity of big deer was
Hmm.
crazy. It's funny to think back. Like even Winke's hit list back in the day was 15 plus bucks deep, on
Yeah.
his farm. And you don't see that very often anymore. So there has certainly been some decline in that regard. So
Sure.
yeah, it kind of depends where you're at in the state, what your personal situation is, but it has gotten better in some ways and worse in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, as an Iowa resident, I mean, how do you view like out of state hunters kind of wanting to come in a lot? I mean, obviously that's
Hmm.
like guy like me coming from Michigan, where a 2.5-year-old buck is. I mean, that's a trophy in our
Right.
area. To
Right.
want to come out there and I mean, and you're right. Like it is turned into it is a money game. I mean, there are
Hmm.
so many people buying up property that take away from local Iowa residents who had, like you said, had permission or could just hunt that property or own that property, and it's
Yeah.
crazy. I just be curious on, as a local Iowa resident, how you view the out of staters coming in.
I don't necessarily have a negative attitude. Well, for one, it's still very hard for out-of-staters to come in, just because of the application, the draw
Yeah,
process,
it's
basically.
it's 5 to 6 years
From
for
archery
archery.
perspective,
Yeah,
yeah. And I do get to work some of the permission ground I have. Out-of-staters come in and hunt, and part of my deal to have permission to hunt is to help with those out-of-staters. Help set up the farms and the
okay,
trail cameras and the
okay,
stands and the blinds. So I enjoy. It's a lot of guys from Michigan, actually, a
yeah,
lot of guys from Michigan, a lot of guys from out east, that have that same mentality that you were talking about, where these big, 3.5-year-old 150, 160 type deer, like you can't ask a guy from Michigan or PA or wherever to pass a deer like that.
right,
And so, I've been fortunate enough to see both sides, to where, like, I get to go celebrate with those guys and see
sure,
how pumped up they are, when they kill a deer like that. But I also see the other side of, when you kill that deer at 3.5, I don't get to hunt him the next
he's
2 years
not
down the
there
road either.
anymore.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So you
yeah,
see the toll of that as well. So it's a hard, it's kind of a hard, stance to take on that. But like I said, like, just overall, I think, if I was to get rid of and offer a lot more out of state non-resident tags, it would certainly, the land values would go through the roof. Everyone would buy everything up. And fortunately, right now, the regulations are still protecting Iowa's deer hunting, for the most part.
yeah,
Now, with that being said, like, I think there's going to be an overall decline the more and more we keep introducing regulations. Like, it seems like there's increased caliber, guns that can be used every year.
hmm,
They keep increasing that. And, like, late muzzleloader season here in Iowa is a perfect example. It's always been looked at historically as a primitive weapon
yep,
season. Well,
yeah. It could
today's world
it
of
couldn't even
muzzleloader
be it
hunting.
couldn't be further from that anymore.
Exactly. So, just the number of deer that have a chance of surviving that late season, big deer anyways, it's pretty, tough on them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
stuff like that. And then, of course, there's just a lot of technology in general, entering into the hunting world with the cell cams and all. So, it's a lot of little pieces that are eventually going to take a big toll, I think. And
hmm,
it is cool to see certain organizations popping up that are trying to, do a good job representing, most Iowa residents and their voices, and trying to help combat some of these things to protect what we have, in terms
yeah.
of the deer hunting here.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like Skip Sly is a huge proponent for the state of Iowa and the people of
Hmm.
Iowa as far as deer hunting, and I think
Yeah.
I think he was a part of Midwest Whitetail at one time. Wasn't he? Maybe like a partial owner or something at one time, or had bought it somewhere
Yeah.
in that when Bill was getting ready to leave, or somewhere
Yeah.
along that line. Yeah,
Yeah. He was
yeah,
one. I think he's the, I guess, investor, if you want to call it that,
sure,
for a short,
sure.
short period of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you going back, when you got out of college, you went to college for what? I mean, what was your
My degree was in sport business management.
okay?
Going through school, I got it. Like I said, I was still very ate up in sports. I was playing college baseball, and I envisioned at that time, maybe taking on a role within the front office of a sports organization or something like that.
Sure.
It was
Sure.
kind of a business minded degree with a sports emphasis.
Okay.
And so I got to do a lot of really cool internships in the sports industry during my time in college. So that's what I went to school for. But as I was getting ready to graduate, I had reached out to Bill, basically saying, "Hey, is there any type of position or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that? I would love to, at least explore this opportunity." And he got back to me and said he doesn't really have anything, but why don't you drive up here? We'll sit down and
Yeah.
maybe we can come up with something. And I went and spent a couple hours in his basement, and we kind of came up with an intern position, and that's kind of where it went from there.
That's awesome. So were you his first intern?
First official intern, yeah.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, me and one other kid. There was a few local kids there in Albia that had filmed and edited for him, just on
Mm-hmm.
the side. But as far as like a first official internship, that year that I graduated college, is me and one other kid were kind of the first official interns.
Yeah, so you guys you were a part of that whole brainchild of the online, semi-live
Hmm.
web or like I guess it wasn't even a web, it was just a web page essentially at that point.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah, basically a website is primarily where, and we got into a little bit of like TV and stuff like that
Yeah.
then, but
Yep.
yeah, it was Bill was always Bill. He's obviously considered the pioneer, or at least I consider him that, in terms of just that format and just him seeing. He was part of. He was such a big outdoor writer, so he in print
Mm-hmm.
media, but he could kind of see the writing on the wall of where that was going. But that I think had a big influence in his idea of the online media, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in a semi-live format. And so it was pretty cool to be a part of it. But yeah, that was 100% Bill's vision
Sure.
of doing that and how that developed.
Sure. Sure. Did you have did you have any sort of like prior knowledge to the filming part of it when you went into that?
I did. I was self-filming my hunts a little bit
Yeah.
prior, but for the most part, like, I didn't know what a video editing program looked
Yeah.
like. For the most part, I was filming with a little handy cam, and I didn't know
Right.
how to turn an actual production camera. I mean, didn't know how to use it at all. So it's again, like, you look back and, like, just grateful for those experiences, because you just when you force yourself to learn and put in the work to do that, I just think it's so much more valuable. I remember when I first started for Bill, we'd work all day long on whatever at the office or on his
Mm-hmm.
farm, and I'd get back to my apartment, and back then it was a website called lynda.com. I think it's since been bought out, but that was kind of the place to go for tutorials. I would stay up all night long in my apartment watching video editing tutorials on lynda.com, and that's how I learned to edit video and just figure it out. So that was, and that's Bill had told me that's primarily the reason he hired me. It wasn't because I had extensive experience. Obviously, it was based on him knowing that I could figure it out
Yeah,
and
yeah,
have
yeah.
the
He could kind of shape and mold you into what he kind of thought he wanted you to
right,
be. So
right.
lynda.com, interesting. Seems like it's probably bought out by YouTube.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to say it was someone, maybe like LinkedIn or something, like
Sure.
a bigger corporation bought it out. I can't remember which corporation it was, but yeah,
Man, if we only would have known now or then what we know now about all of these things, holy
I know,
to
I
have
know
that sort of
exactly.
vision, I mean, like Bill, like you said, he was pretty visionary with his whole thing, but to see where it is now is, I think it's really beyond anybody's wildest dreams. What it is now, and
Yeah.
like you guys were producing like TV show type stuff. I mean, that was Midwest Whitetail. Was that on the Outdoor Channel or was that on like
It was Sportsman at the time.
Sportsman?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So to go from that and then to basically where we are now, where I mean, my personal opinion is the Outdoor Channel it's a dinosaur now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you're
Yeah.
still relying on the Outdoor Channel to be your, I guess, source for that sort of hunting space, you're really missing the boat.
Yeah. 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 And it just didn't make sense. There was just, you think about the cost of airtime, in addition to, like, I always enjoy a well-told story when it comes to this.
Right,
You can watch
right.
a million kills. I mean, just,
Yep.
you can watch kills all day long, but a well-told story to me is what stands out and won't ever get old. But like, it's hard to tell a story when you're trying to fit it in 22 and a half minutes and fit in all these commercial breaks and like
Yeah,
just the formats. And I think, you talk about like the popularity of podcasting now. It's
right.
because you don't have a time restraint. You can have a full conversation, and it was that same kind of principle applied to the
Yeah,
online video world.
yeah. Nobody's telling you when to stop. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I always tell people, they always ask, well, how long will this be? I'm like, well, it'll be as long as you want it to be, or until the conversation gets really shitty, and then you just kind of know when to
Yeah.
stop.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So I, going back a little bit, and this is off subject, you played baseball in college.
I did. Yeah.
What college was that?
It was just a small D2 school in St. Louis called Maryville University.
Okay, okay,
Right on in the west part of St. Louis.
yeah,
I loved it. It was the student athlete experience, even just at the D2 level.
mm-hmm.
I I think it made me just. I was fortunate to have an academic full ride anyway, so I was a good
Nice.
student. But just like the process of being a student athlete kept you organized on all fronts. Like, I was a
Sure.
better student because I was an athlete, and
Yeah,
the
you
time
had
management
to
skills
be
you
that
learn.
way.
And yep, exactly. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole experience of that, getting to play ball, just your teammates, you become lifelong friends.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, being in St. Louis, there's so many opportunities. One of the internships, one of my bigger internships, was with Rawlings, who was headquartered right
Oh
next to our
wow.
campus.
Yeah.
So getting to test gloves and bats and work within their organization was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, I'd pay a lot of money to go back and do it again. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, yeah. What position did you
Yeah.
play? I only ask because I'm ate up with baseball. Both my
Yeah.
boys played baseball. My youngest boy, he was a pitcher for a small college up here in Michigan, and like that's I love it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what
Same here.
position what position did you play?
I was a shortstop.
Shortstop. All right, man. A guy with hands,
Yeah. Yeah.
soft
I
hands.
did. I pitched throughout high school, and I did pitch my freshman year of college. But then I separated my shoulder, which was kind of one of the best things that happened to me. That I was just shortstop after that. It's,
Sure.
double headers where you're pitching one game and playing short the next game. It takes a toll on you too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just focusing on
You're
shortstop
throwing
was a
just
good
as
thing.
hard, just not as many times.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So did you? Oh, I just kind of lost my track of mind here. I guess when you went for that internship, I mean, and worked with Bill, did you ever think that that was a path it was going to take you? I mean, where did you decide that, like, I'm going to go into the sports side of it, and then you
hmm
end up in this side of it? I mean, where was that disconnect, or where did you make that decision that, like, this is the route I'm actually going?
I loved the hunting enough that I convinced myself to at least try. I didn't know what the career opportunities were out of
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I thought it'd be a really cool experience to at least see what the outdoor industry, hunting
Mm-hmm.
industry was like. And even years into it, I still didn't know if it was going to be, my long-term thing. Because I worked extremely hard in college to kind of build a resume, set myself apart, set myself
Mm-hmm.
up for, a
Just
good job offer and opportunity in the sports world or business world or whatever. So, I worked for Bill after the internship. The internship was just basically turned into a full-time job just a few months down the road. So I worked full-time for Bill for like a year and a half. And I got to the point, even it's a year and a half seems short now, but I was at the point where, do I really want to just be a cameraman and video editor?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this the career path? Like, you know, I worked really hard throughout college to have a good career opportunity. Is this what I'm going to do with, you know, with all of that? So I did take a job in marketing and operations for Muddy Outdoors.
Okay.
That was located right there. But the kicker in all of it, because I did switch jobs, even got out of the hunting industry for a while, just to keep it as a hobby. But the kicker to all of it, I never quit producing for Bill. I always, you know, even if I was working a different full-time job, I'd work my 9 to 5 and I'd get back to my apartment and edit his videos at night. So that was kind of, I kept my foot in the door of the hunting industry that entire time. I guess more than a foot in the door. You know, just 'cause,
you were working 2 full-time jobs.
But that's what allowed me to kind of, when I got to the point where I was ready to dive back in full time, you know, it was an easy transition, I guess. And I still had, you know, built up that reputation and connections and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. How old were you at the time when you started all that? Like early 20s?
Yeah. So I would have been 22 when I graduated college, I guess. Yeah.
If you had advice, or if you could give advice to a young kid, like, I mean, like I was telling you before we hit record, my son is actually, you know, he's in that industry right now, filming and editing. What advice would you give someone like that if they were looking to like long-term type goals?
Man, it's a good question.
To be sustainable. I mean, you know, like you said, you don't want to be a cameraman for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends what, excuse me, it depends what your interests are. And it depends on the individual. Like I know a lot of guys in that space, obviously, that are the quote unquote freelance camera guys, editors, producers. Anytime, you know, I'm just a big believer in guys betting on themselves. So like, you know, in that situation, you know, maybe you end up in a good organization working for someone that you could see where you get paid well, you have good flexibility, whatever. But I think a lot of those guys are scared to go off on their own and be a true freelance guy or start their own media business. Because that, you know, you could get to the point where you're the one hiring the cameraman and you're just kind of managing the production of it. You're getting the contract, you're doing all the stuff. And so I think a lot of guys in that position, again, just that filming editing world, think they have to work for somebody or for a brand, and that's all they see long term. Whereas, you know, I think you can grow it exponentially if you're willing to bet on yourself and really create your own business in that regard, because there's always going to be a need for cameramen, excuse me, and really good producers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I guess maybe that would segue into you actually leaving Midwest Whitetail and going out on your own. I mean, I guess tell me a little bit about that and what you all right having a cough attack there? I'll speak on your behalf.
Yeah. I got a lingering cough that won't go away. Man, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, no, like there's been a lot of people. It's going around, and it's been going around for quite some time.
Yeah, it's a lingering cough, won't go away, and then you can cut this out if you want. But I had a heart operation a couple of weeks ago, and I had to be put on like a blood thinner post surgery, and so my nose bleeds like every day, and so I was coughing and my nose started bleeding too. So
you're too young to be having heart problems, man. Yeah, you're too young to be having heart issues.
My third one. I've had heart issues my whole life, so it's hopefully this is one of the final ones. We'll see.
This is the fix. This is the fix of it. So
yeah, that's the hope. But yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's totally fine. Totally fine. I think we were talking about just your what you were thinking when you actually made the determination to leave Midwest Whitetail and go out on your own. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that, like the thoughts that you were having and the emotions. I'm sure there had to be some emotion to it,
Yeah. I mean, it was a
going
big
off and
part.
doing your own thing.
Yeah, it was a big part of, what I had done most of my life, obviously. So it wasn't easy, but now it's something that I wish I would have done years sooner, to be honest. It goes back to
Yeah.
what I was mentioning about, guys like your son or whoever in that position being willing to bet on themselves, because I think
Yeah.
for the right person that has the right, mindset, mentality, work ethic, if you bet on yourself in this arena, the opportunity is so much bigger than working for someone
Yeah.
else. And the other thing too is, like we've been talking, I've been doing this for so long, and the Midwest Whitetail business has changed so much over the years. So many different people involved, and investors, and bought and sold, and like it just was a different animal compared to those early days, like we were talking about.
Right.
And so having the experience of content creation and editing and filming and producing the type of content that I like to create and that people like to watch, it just made sense for me to just have
Right.
full control of it. And the other thing too is, like, in this career, you call it a career, but it's a passion. And it gets tricky when you're mixing your passion with your work and your full-time career.
Yeah.
So when I looked at it that way, me having 100% control of it was allowed me to keep it more fun and prevent that burnout, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
So it just made so much sense for me to control it and to, basically design what it would look like in the future, work with the people I want to work with, again, create the type of content that I like to create. Just was kind of, I think 100% of people, if they were in my shoes, would have made the same decision. And it's just something that, again, I'm enjoying it a lot more now, which is big for me, and, family and all that stuff.
Yeah. And kudos to you for doing that, because I know that takes a lot of cojones to basically put it all on your shoulders, and not, like, you're creating your paycheck at that point. You're not
Right.
letting somebody else sign your paycheck. So I mean,
Right.
it's that is definitely something that it's something to be proud of for sure on your part. And I mean, anybody that I've ever talked to that has gone out on their own, and whatever business it is, you ask them all, and they all, everybody at least that I've talked to, is like, I work harder, but I'm more proud of it, because
Oh yeah.
it's what I wanted to do. It's what who I am, and I handle how I want it to be. So I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about being your own boss.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily easier.
I don't think there's any way it's easier. I mean, like, there are days where I'm jealous of the 9 to 5ers that, check
Yeah.
out, don't think about work, starting Friday at 5 till, Monday at 8. Like, there's basically, for me, there's no difference between a Saturday and a Monday. They're all
Right.
work days for me. So
Yeah, 7 days a week.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's definitely something to be proud of. So I guess what are you doing technically now? Like, do you have your own media company or production company, or I guess what is it that?
You could call it a media company. I didn't create a brand. It's just me. But
Okay.
one thing I've really focused on is trying to build deeper relationships throughout the industry. So, a lot of people know of hunting brands or shows that have quote
Sure.
unquote sponsorships, right? And those are fine, but those surface level sponsorships can go away at any time. They're not good long-term
Hmm.
business plans, structure wise. So I've really tried to focus on actual valuable partnerships
Hmm.
where, I have my hand in product development and, that type of stuff, where I can, and ownership in certain brands, where I can kind of dictate the long-term vision of it. And I've tried to find categories that I am passionate about and consider myself a power user, where I can have more say in that. I launched a a scent line, a mock scrape scent line last year,
Okay.
just because I love mock scrapes, and I think they're one of the best inventory tools. And so that was a product I really wanted to dig into. Food plot seed, I have my own line of food plot seed. So trying to find areas where, rather than just working with a company on, where I can have a lot more control and basically stake and skin in the game of a brand and how it grows, and try to appeal to what guys want, and just be genuine about the use of the product and the quality of the product. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's mainly what I'm involved in. I do a lot of photography work, a lot of videography work, share a lot of content with brands, and some land management work, a little bit of consulting, just a little bit of everything, but it all kind of revolves around the same stuff.
Man, you're a hell of an entrepreneur. I mean, you got your hands in a
Something
lot
like
of stuff.
my wife tells me I need to learn how to say no to
I,
opportunities. So
yeah, and I guess that leads into another question of mine is like, how do you juggle this with your family? I mean, you have a young family.
I do, and
Where is that work family separation, and how do you do that?
it's not easy, but I will say, when you are your own boss, you can make it work probably
Yeah,
easier than not. A lot of times,
sure.
I can go pick up my daughter from school and go do something. Like today, I picked her up. We went to Iowa City, got her turkey license, and shot the gun a little bit. Like, this is like middle of the afternoon type stuff that
Sure.
I try to not to
Can't
take
do as a
that
nine
stuff
to
for
fiver.
granted. Yeah,
Yeah,
but then
yeah,
now I'm in my office, and we'll be in my office later tonight getting work done. But so there's
sure,
not less work, but you have the flexibility of doing it,
sure.
after she goes to bed, and things like that.
Yeah,
So it's a constant juggling act. I'm not gonna say that I have it figured out, but I think you just learn to prioritize the right
the
things over time.
yeah, yeah. Well, bless your wife for putting up with you. I know my wife's the same way, but
Yeah,
she also
exactly.
knows that if I don't get to do what I love to do, that I'm probably not a real fun person to be around. I don't know if you're that way or not. Like,
It's critically important to be passionate about something, and to
yeah,
make time for that passion. Yep.
yeah, keeps it for me. It keeps my mind clear, I guess. Well, maybe not clear, but it helps me clear my mind, I should say.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah. So you just bought a new piece of property.
Yep.
You had an existing piece of property. Now, was that a partnership piece, that first piece that you had, or did you have your own piece, or did you have a couple different pieces?
The very first one I had was a partnership piece. And I sold my half of that and bought my own piece. It was about
Okay.
100 acres. And I owned that for about 3 years. And I just recently sold that one to buy this new piece, which is a little
Okay.
bit bigger. It's about
Nice.
160 acres. So,
Oh, wow.
um,
Wow.
yeah, I'm super excited. It was hard to let that last one go, because I put so much time and energy into it, and really changed it. It was a cattle farm. It really didn't have great hunting,
Mm-hmm.
and I turned it into, well, I mean, I think its best years are ahead of it, but put in a lot of cover, put in food, like made it a really good whitetail farm. So it was not easy to give that up, but I just couldn't say no to this new farm that came up for sale. And this new farm is a lot of the same. It's very much a blank slate.
Sure.
Very little hunting history, no food, no. I don't think I will. Shouldn't say never, but I don't think I would enjoy buying a turnkey farm, one that's already set up. I just
Yeah.
love the process of looking at it like a canvas, and a blank canvas, and just saying that, here's how I want to set everything up. And this farm is the perfect example of that. So I'm over the moon excited about all the upcoming projects, and turning it into a really good hunting farm.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that about turnkey properties, because I mean, there's so many. It seems like there's so many properties out there that people buy, and they upgrade them and then they flip them.
Mm-hmm.
And I I mean, the property prices in Iowa. I mean, you've seen it. They're through the roof. Like
Yeah.
a friend of mine, he's been buying and selling property in Iowa. He's a Michigan resident for the better part of probably 10, 15 years. And
Yeah.
It's been interesting because we said at one time, oh, listen, property in Iowa is never going to go for $4,000 an acre. There's no way it'll ever hit that mark. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think it went past $4,000 an acre like it was
Yeah.
like it was a bus, like you were
Yeah.
standing on the side of the road and a bus just passed you by. And I mean, next thing you know, we're into the sixes.
Yep.
How,
Yeah.
how does a guy or just anybody in general, how do you navigate even purchasing something like that?
It's so tough. I never dreamt that I would ever own land.
Yeah.
Growing up, my family didn't own land. It was just like, it was truly a pipe dream. Like, man,
Yeah.
that would be so awesome. And to be where I'm at, owning, it's a good size. It's not huge, but 160
Yeah.
acres.
160 acres is a great piece. Yeah.
Never would have dreamt in my entire lifetime. Doing that, but it's one of those things where you just have to stretch yourself. It's not comfortable, but
No.
you have to talk yourself into land. It's not going the other way, just like what you talked
It's an
about.
absolute investment.
It's an
Absolute
investment. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you just have to comfort yourself and stretch yourself as far as you can, because I do
Yeah.
think there will be a day for a lot of people, maybe we're there or close to it, but I think we're going to be saying the same thing 10 years down the road. Like, man, I wish I would have bought every $6,000 an acre piece that I possibly could. They're just not making more of it, and you just have to make it happen, because once you get in, everything becomes a lot easier, because you start working with some equity and start,
Sure.
can swap up pieces or change pieces, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely tough, and I've, I'm your average guy when it comes to, as far as like, financially, and so you
Sure.
really have to stretch yourself to make it happen.
Yep.
And just look at it as an investment, and to me, it's more than investment because money. If I have money sitting in the stock market, I don't get to enjoy that. Whereas if I got money sitting in land, I get to enjoy it every day. And there's a pretty big intangible value to that. But nonetheless, it's still a good straight up financial investment too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's better than a 401k in a lot of aspects because
Right.
it's, I mean, it's not going down. It's not
Right.
going down.
Right.
So, yeah. So you got this new piece of property. Tell me about it outside of like it's just a cattle piece. I mean, it's like cattle were running on it the whole 160 acres. I mean, how's it set up?
No, sorry, I should have clarified that. It's not a cattle farm,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's very much the same in terms of like, very little hunting history, not set up at all. Not there, not stands, no blinds, not
Sure. Okay.
no
Okay.
food plots, no, the habitat. The habitat is there in terms of the cover. It's got really good cover. Almost the whole thing is cover.
Okay.
They're younger trees, and so
Okay.
the habitat is ideal. I'm going to work on it some just to optimize it, create some more horizontal, lower ground level type cover, some better bedding. But drawing in some of the food plots, the hunting locations, is going to be the fun part. And, I get to, because it is just a blank slate of trees pretty much, I'm going to get to draw in my own fields and create my own pinch points and all that type of stuff. So it's kind of the opposite problem. If I'm looking at like my last farm, didn't have enough habitat, had plenty of places to put food, but didn't have enough habitat.
Sure.
I really need to increase the holding capacity on that farm in terms of just the overall deer numbers that farm could support. This one, it's the opposite. I need to find room for food to increase the holding of the deer on that farm.
So it is 100% holding property.
It is, yeah. And
Now,
again, it could be optimized, but yeah.
Did you seek that out specifically when you were looking for a piece of property? Or
No.
was this just something that you just...
Not that specific aspect, but for sure the blank slate aspect of getting
Okay.
to improve and make a whitetail hunting farm.
Okay.
This one could be good from the standpoint. I mean, you could have some good hunting in general, but it's the potential is so far away. Like it's through the roof. It could be exponentially better if you optimize the bedding, but strategically place the food in the open areas to where the deer are comfortable using it. You can get in and out access wise. All that stuff's going to be, just again, I'm over the moon excited about it because it's going to be
Yeah.
so fun to just be able to draw that in the way I see fit.
Is there row crop or grass on it or anything like that?
No, nothing really. Like I said, it's
Wow.
almost 160 acres of straight young trees, but
Young trees. So was it, I'm assuming, was it cut at one time?
no, it was a mostly tillable fields, and they
Oh,
planted
it
the
just,
trees roughly 30 years ago.
oh, wow.
30,
Oh,
30
man.
to 35. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is definitely, it's got to be super thick then.
Yeah.
What,
So
what
I
is it?
will.
What is it primarily made up of? The woods?
They're all really desirable species. So a lot of
Good.
oaks.
Good.
Pretty heavy on the oaks. There's some walnuts. I would say there's some pine. There's a lot of volunteer cedar. But as far as the planted trees, they're all some white pine. There's basically every oak species. Um, there's some walnuts in certain areas. There's some cherry trees, not
Hmm.
much for hickory, but yeah, I mean, it's as far as like a visually appealing farm, it's got that eye candy because it's all
Nice.
just desirable species, just
Yeah.
all uniform height. It's really, really cool.
Are you going to be able to get into trees, like to hunt, like tree stands and stuff?
Yep,
Yeah.
I would say,
They're that big.
yeah, I would say 80% of the trees on the farm are, at least for me anyway, the perfect size tree stand tree.
Perfect.
They're all
Yeah.
they're all straight.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the right diameter to where, maybe not for two guys, but for one guy, and being
Yeah.
able to shoot on all sides of the tree, like
Yeah.
that's pretty sweet. Yeah,
Man,
there's
that
a lot
sounds
of
so
straight oak
exciting
trees. Yeah,
to have a
yeah,
blank slate like that, just to be like, oh gosh, yeah, your mind's just got to race at
yeah,
night thinking about all the things that you can do and want to do. And I
yeah.
hope you have some equipment.
Yeah. Well, I do, but I'm looking to
Upgrade.
get more. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never actually owned my own tractor. I always typically trade work
Sure.
for it. Like, landowners I work for, I have
Sure.
access to their equipment. But I would say, I'm pretty within the next week or two, I'm gonna pull the trigger on, my own setup.
Sure. Why not, man? Right.
Yeah, it's well, they're spendy as you know, but yeah,
Yeah.
it makes everything a lot
I
more
mean,
efficient.
it's really, it just goes hand in hand. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you
it's
can't have a
necessary.
piece of property like that and not have a way to do anything to it. You know?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. 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 Does it have water on it?
It does. It's got a beautiful, like, 4.5 acre pond.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
So
Yeah.
I'll add probably a couple more like small water holes. Actually, while shed hunting, I found just kind of like a natural spring area that
Oh,
didn't,
neat.
even in -15, -20 degree temps, it never froze over, and the deer were in it all winter long. It was
Oh,
really cool.
gosh, man.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just finding little stuff like that even gets you excited.
Oh, I'm sure you're probably just on the tip of finding some cool stuff. I'm sure it'll reveal itself every day you're out there. You'll find something new and better
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So like what I guess what is your plan for the property? What is like your long-term plan for the property? I mean,
So long term, within a couple of years. So I mentioned all the trees being planted. They're actually in a CRP program. So you actually get paid on the trees like you do any CRP. It's an
okay.
annual
Yeah, I
CRP
was gonna
payment.
ask you if there was like some sort of income or something that from that
Yep.
property.
Yep.
That's
So it's
always a
it's
huge piece
actually
of
really
buying it.
good income, but the contract expires in a couple of years, and it can't be re-enrolled. So at that point, I'm going to, and this is part of the fun for me, I get to kind of draw in some tillable fields to
Okay.
bring back income. to the property. And so there's some natural areas where it's really good soil, but for whatever reason, the trees didn't do that well. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to go and clear some of that out to
Yeah.
farm it. I'll probably do a mix of soybeans, corn, alfalfa. And so,
Yep.
now I'll have that income, but I get to, again, shape it the way I want, create those
Sure.
pinpoints, make sure they're set up in strategic locations to hunt, locations that are, comfortable for the deer to utilize. There's so much to that. It'll be a lot of work clearing that out, but I think it's a very unique situation to go into, that you get to literally draw your own fields amongst really
Yeah.
good cover. Like I think, more often than not, it's the opposite, where you're trying to build cover and
Yeah.
you're just kind of stuck working with what you have. But this one, I get to kind of go in and clear it out and shape it the exact way I want.
Set it up for the winds, and oh man, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, man, it's again, it's like, hopefully I kill some good deer. I'm sure I will, but it's
Yeah.
that's the last thing I'm worried about right now. It's like the rest of it's so fun.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I feel like this is pretty important for sure in any property, but probably more so, maybe even in Iowa. You got to have the right neighbors as well. Was that a part of this whole kind of purchase? Was the area that it's in? Because I get this feeling that there is, I don't want to call it a syndicate in Iowa, but there are definitely groups that do a very, very good job of managing huge pieces just based off of how they work together.
Yeah, it's huge. Your farm is only as good as your neighbors, really.
Right.
You have to be on the same page. But the hard part about that is, when farms come up for sale, you don't necessarily have the time to do all that research.
No.
They go and knock. And
No.
this one's a little further from my house, so it's a neighborhood I have, zero intel on, zero familiarity with.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
so, I don't necessarily, and this one stayed on the market for a while, so I potentially would have had time to go, knock on doors, try to meet the
Sure.
neighbors, try to
Sure.
figure out. But there's also that aspect where you kind of open yourself up a little bit. You get ahead of before you even purchase it. So I've, now that I've closed on the farm, started to go and introduce myself and start build those relationships. But really, the extent of my neighborhood scouting before buying this farm was, one, aerial map wise, like there's a lot of open area touching the farm to where no one can hunt your fence line. So it's like,
Okay.
I know my farm's going to be kind of a natural escape or natural cover for, especially
pressure is going to drive deer
when those
into
ag
your
fields,
ground.
when those ag fields get picked and all that type of stuff, like the deer will kind of suck in to that good cover. But two, I also walk the perimeter before I put an offer on the farm. I walk the perimeter. I mean, on the inside of the farm, but walk basically my fence line all the way around. And in the area where I hunt here in my part of the state where I live and most of my permission farms are, almost every farm I hunt, you walk the fence line, you're going to come across lots of stands, lots of blinds that are right on the fence line, pretty much on all sides. I didn't find one single stand or blind around this entire farm.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so, that doesn't necessarily mean much. It could change,
Sure.
especially if people figure out where it's at, they will relatively quickly. That could change. But, that at least gave me a good feeling of the pressure's not terrible.
A little bit.
Yeah. So, and I was able to run cameras basically since January on the farm. So I got a good feel for the age structure and deer density and stuff like that. And it's all very exciting. A lot of good 3 and 4 year old type deer.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I hope, I'm looking forward to seeing how it shakes out.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to sharing the story too. I need to get out there and get some content filmed and start working on some of those projects. But I'll probably introduce it, over video here within the next week or so, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you expect to see bucks like the bucks you have behind you there?
I think the potential is 100% there. Yeah,
Really?
I really do. I can't. It would be pure luck if there's, a giant there year one. But I think all the potential
Yeah.
in the world is there for it to produce good deer every year. Especially once I start optimizing the bedding and adding food to the mix.
Nice.
And a variety of, especially like year-round type food, like your clover and stuff like that.
Yep.
It will just hold deer and get them more accustomed to, hanging around and being on the property.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to see what the future holds for that. So,
Yeah, man, it'll be fun.
yeah, for sure. Are you I know you're kind of getting into trad bow stuff, or you have been for a while. Is
Yeah.
that something that is going to be? I mean, are you going to commit to that?
Yeah, I was actually shooting, right before I came in. We
Okay.
finished dinner and I had 15 minutes before you and I were going to get on the podcast, and
Right on.
I flung a few arrows in the backyard. So, I want to. It's just I just have to make time for it. The times where I've gotten in trouble, not in trouble, but like the times where I've found myself leaving it at home more often is because I haven't made enough time to shoot it, and
Sure.
I have yet to fling an arrow at a deer. I've killed a couple turkeys with it, but I've yet to shoot at a deer, and I want to just make sure I'm ready. I want to make sure that I'm very, it's not like riding a bike. I mean, anyone that's shot trad, you can't just leave it for weeks at a time and expect to go hunting with it like you can a compound. So I've just been mindful of that, and there's been periods where I've just been strictly too busy, especially late summer, trying to get things done and haven't had time to shoot. And then that's when I find myself not taking it to the woods just because I'm not comfortable, shooting at a deer. So,
well, and I mean, and that's good on you for not, I guess, for not being overly confident with it to go shoot at a deer. I mean, the last thing we want to do as deer hunters is wound something just because we didn't take the time to be proficient in whatever weapon that we're using. So, I mean, but it'll come, right? It'll come.
For sure. And part of the reason I was shooting too, I got invited last minute on a trip to Africa, and I leave in like,
oh wow,
10 or 11 days. So it'll be really cool. We're going to hunt over there, but it's also going to be kind of a mission oriented trip where we're going to help some orphanages and schools and communities over there. And it'll be really cool, really cool film that we're putting together. But anyways, like I'm pretty heavily leaning towards taking my recurve over there.
Sure, why not, right?
Potentially get a kill over there. So
what part of Africa are you going to?
It'll be South Africa. I think it's near Port Elizabeth.
Okay.
I think it's the name of the town. So
yeah.
Be my first experience. I've never really had a burning desire to hunt Africa.
Sure.
But this opportunity, I think, with it being more than just the hunt, will be the experience of a lifetime, and one that I couldn't say no to. So
yeah, for sure. My son was over there last year with Mark Peterson when we were talking earlier, and they were in Tanzania, and I think they were there for like 2 weeks. I think 17 different animals or something like that.
That's crazy.
He says it is a target rich environment for sure. Yeah. You are never not going to find something that you can't hunt. So
yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a cool experience.
That'll be exciting. So with your permission, I'm gonna ask you just a couple off topic questions, just to kind of give people an idea of who Jared Mills is outside of like us having this conversation. Like, favorite music. What are you listening to? What's on your playlist when you jump in your vehicle and go for a ride, like when you're heading out to your property or whatever? What are you jamming to?
Definitely country. All different types of country music. Yeah, old stuff, new stuff, a little bit of everything.
Okay. All right. Yeah. How about your first car? What were you rolling around St. Louis in?
Well, it was a little before St. Louis, but
Yeah,
it
true,
was
true.
a Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, little two-door. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah, yeah. I remember it. I don't remember how long I had that, but I certainly remember driving it those first couple years of high school.
That's funny. That's
Yeah,
funny. Rusty old thing, probably.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't in the greatest of shape for sure.
We
It
always
was
got
your
to start
typical
out.
first car.
Yeah, yeah, we got to start out somewhere. Well, I shouldn't say my typical first car. I mean, I'm not dating myself because this car was much older than me when I turned 16, but my first car was a 1965 Chevelle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like with a big V8. But I came from my dad was a real gearhead in the 60s. Like he was a motor guy. So of course, when me and my brother both turned 16, my brother he's older by a few years. He got a white 1965 Chevelle, and I got a black 1965 Chevelle. So like
Nice.
we were the boys that were running around town that always had our foots in the gas pedal.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
But I had plenty of friends that drove the Oldsmobiles like you
Yeah,
had too. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I've drove
exactly.
some myself since then for sure. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
How about hobbies outside of what you're doing?
Oh man.
Is there a hobby that you do that like
I
most
would say
people
golf.
wouldn't? Yeah, you like golfing?
I enjoy golfing. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
good at it, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy going, out with buddies. I actually enjoy it enough that I put a simulator in here. My office is in my garage, and the
Oh,
next
you're
room
kidding
over
me.
has a golf simulator in it. Yeah, it was all.
Right
It
on.
took about 2.5 years to put in because it was all DIY, and I never had time to work on it. But I finally finished it up this last winter, and it's been fun. Buddies come over, and we do like little league nights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
fun.
Have to get some tips from Jay from Wild Outdoors.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was a big time golfer or
yeah,
semi-professional golfer or something, yeah,
yeah. I think I did
at
know
one
that.
time. Yeah, yeah. So, um all right, last one. Food. Are
Man,
you just like a beer and a cheeseburger guy, or are you just or you got
no,
something wild off the charts that?
I love. I mean, I don't think there's any kind of meat that I don't like, and fortunately, my wife enjoys wild game. We eat a
Yeah,
lot of venison.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think you can't go wrong with venison. Excuse me, we do a lot of sous vide venison and sous vide
oh,
like
okay,
wild turkey
yeah,
breast.
yeah,
That's some of our favorite ways to prepare it. So yeah, it's anything meat we do, you know, pork chops and
yeah,
everything that way. So yeah,
yeah.
it's I think that's probably my thing.
Are you
Can't
are
go
you
wrong
a
with that.
dessert guy or a junk food guy?
Not necessarily junk food.
You're not a Casey's pizza
Boring
guy?
answer. Casey's pizza is good. Yeah, I don't eat it as much as I used to, but
Right.
it's
Yeah, it doesn't treat the body quite the same.
you can't not eat Casey's pizza in Iowa.
Right.
It's a
It's like a
religion thing down
staple.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is for sure. For
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Casey's
Yeah.
pizza is good. Yeah, I don't know. There's not too much I don't like really. I'm not really a picky eater, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
our 6-year-old daughter, she's like the least pickiest 6-year-old that I've ever
Oh,
come across. So
good for you. Good
yeah,
for you for
she'll,
sure.
she'll eat anything we make, which is awesome.
Yeah. Sweet. Sweet. Well, anyway, man, I know I've taken up a bit of your time tonight, and I certainly appreciate you doing this. Even though it sounds like you might be a little bit under the weather.
Yeah, a little bit.
So
I think I'm on the mend if I could get rid of this cough.
I think you just need to get outside and start walking that property is what I think you need to
Yeah,
do.
that's a pretty good prescription there.
Yeah, yeah, that's always a good prescription. So, but anyway, for the people listening, where can they find you? What's the best
Um,
place? What's the best place to find you?
YouTube is the primary spot. That's where
Okay.
I have all the long form video. Just on my channel under my name. The long form video, the better told stories, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I do have Instagram and Facebook. I'm not a big social media fan, but if guys want to reach out to me, I do try to respond to
Yeah.
all the messages there
Well,
and stuff.
and that's personally, that's how I found you. I just kind of cold called you, and
Yeah,
that is the one thing I should say. That is the one thing that I love about social media, because it makes people who, I don't want to say who were untouchable, but kind of unreachable. Really, you didn't really know
yeah,
what channels to go through to get in touch with somebody.
right.
But now you can, man, you can really just reach out to whoever you want on a whim, and I
Right.
mean, I appreciate you responding.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that's a good place for people to reach out if they want to get in touch directly with me.
yeah.
But yeah, as far as following along with the content, YouTube is the primary spot.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, anyway, I am extremely excited to see what you got going on in the future. I'm sure it will be very, very high quality, and as I would expect, because you're just a high quality type of individual from a work standpoint, and I think a personal standpoint too, just for the short period of time that we've been talking. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I would love to catch up with you, maybe down the road, closer to season or something, and just see
Yeah,
what the progress of the property is, and maybe talk about some of the things that you've learned and from the property, and the good, the bad, and the ugly all together, I suppose, if if,
yeah. It'd
if
be
that would
fun
be something
to
you'd be willing
revisit
to
it.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
since we're working
yeah,
on the front end, I really haven't done anything yet, so it'll be fun to continue to tell that story. And
yeah,
yeah, man, I
yeah,
appreciate you reaching out and inviting me
yeah.
on, and I'm happy to do it anytime.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I got one more year to go till I can get my Iowa tag.
There
So
you go.
I'm going into 5 points this year, and I'm sure, I'm hoping that 6 is going to be the key number.
Yeah.
So,
Have you bow
but
hunted Iowa before?
I have a couple times. Yeah, I was
Okay.
out there.
Mhm.
Let's see, it would have been 2020. Yeah, 2020. I
Okay.
was out there.
Okay.
And actually, the buddy of mine that I have, he owns some property up around, oh shoot, south of Des Moines. The units south of Des Moines. I can't. I'm
Zone
terrible.
5 or zone
Yeah,
4?
yeah, yeah. I think it was 4.
It
Um,
4 would be west of the interstate. West of
okay,
35, I think, is zone 4. East of 35, I think, is zone 5, if I
okay,
remember
yeah.
right.
So it would have been east. It would have been east.
Okay, so probably zone
Yeah,
5, yeah.
yeah. Just a small town. In there, he owns some property just outside of town. But I actually hunted on public, the big chunk of public that's down
Okay.
there,
Yep.
and shot a nice buck. He was probably in the 140s range. Um,
Nice.
but it was a piece of property that we had kind of scouted out in the spring, and I just went in on a flyer, and I just it felt right, and after 2 sets it happened. So
That's
deer came
awesome.
in, and I was able to get it all on film too, so which was super cool. So
That's awesome.
that was great. So but yeah, it'll be another year before I get back out there, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. It'll probably end up being private or public again. So we'll see what happens. So
Yeah, very
I'm just
cool.
excited. I'm just excited to have the opportunity, and anyway, but thanks again,
Awesome,
man. I
man.
really I really appreciate your time, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a great night.